We're here today with Kelly Jones, and as I've told her before, she absolutely fascinates me. And that's because she works with some really high profile clients, big companies, professional and collegiate sports teams. But she also works with regular Janes like us, and she's going to give us advice that really encompasses all of her experience with the pros and with people just like us. So she's talking to us about really that pressure to overexercise, to diet, to go to extremes with our health. And since we tend to find the quickest, best, most effective way to reach our goals, sometimes that's not the best with health. So among other things, Kelly's going to help us identify some of these disordered patterns that can happen to anybody. Now I know you're thinking, "Oh, I'm not one of those women." Well, anybody can be one of those women who falls into some dangerous patterns when trying to reach health goals. So I want to start with asking you, Kelly, how do you feel about that assumption that really it's such a minority of women that fall into disordered patterns, and essentially that can't happen to me, that assumption?
Sure. A lot of people think they hear disordered patterns and they automatically think of an eating disorder.
Yeah.
And eating disorders are the ultimate extreme. It's where we never want people to get to on the continuum. And disordered eating is what's in between. And when you look at, the pressures in society on women right now, to be a successful, person in terms of
Yeah.
their career, to then be able to raise kids on top of having a career. People get judged just for like being a stay-at-home mom sometimes, and then to look perfect while doing it all.
Right.
It's really easy to just get trapped in these kind of mental games, thinking that you need to do X, Y, or Z to fit into a certain mold. And it happens because it's so normal around us, so to speak, to diet and to overexercise and to expect all these things from yourself. You just kind of get trapped without realizing it's a problem, and that's what then accelerates long term into an actual eating disorder.
It's interesting that you said how normalized it is around us. And years ago, I did a study of really just kind of a not informal because it was a real study, but an informal look through of women's magazines for different age groups. And I found that across all these different magazines that target different ages, everything from Cosmo to Good Housekeeping, so that big of a range, we found, gosh, I mean, there are ads about being good, guilt free, and exercise to get a hot bod. And no matter what age group we were talking about, this pressure still existed. So I think we can't understate how much we have that just around us all the time.
For sure. And, I started my career as a professor, actually, teaching mostly
Woo-hoo.
nursing students. Yeah, mostly nursing students, also some exercise science students. I still do that a couple of days a week. I'll get back to that in the fall. But so I see a lot of what college students go through, but then consulting for fitness clubs and working with some active women, that's actually the population where disordered eating is on the rise the most. So
Yes.
while you kind of expect it as a college student, because everyone's talking about the freshman 15, even though you're going from being an adolescent to an adult and it's normal to gain body fat at that point,
Yeah.
there's this messaging that that's wrong, that you need to keep the weight off. Everyone around you may be dieting. And then you leave college and then there's different pressures. So it just constantly, it really does continue. And there's always these messages, like you said, about, feeling guilty. Like, why is that guilt free? Why should I feel guilty otherwise for eating something I enjoy, right?
It's a
So,
brownie.
yeah, exactly. Like, it makes me happy. It tastes good. I feel good. So, then that projects onto people to make them feel bad about themselves in other ways if they're eating foods that are labeled as bad, so to
Yeah.
speak.
It's interesting to. I'm also a professor, and I teach health promotion and a personal health course, especially with these students who are they're worried because they see themselves falling into patterns, but really, like what you're saying about how it's not the college students you'd expect, it's women, professional women, grown women who are feeling these pressures more because you add on all of that, like you'd mentioned earlier, your career goals, your family goals, your social life. And I found even in my personal life that really after college was when it got harder because college you're walking everywhere. You are, and you have the benefit of, 20 something metabolism at that point. And it's interesting that you've had the same experience with that age group and have seen this difference where we make that assumption, the freshman 15, the drinking beer and partying. Oh no, it happens after.
Right. So, afterwards, a lot of people end up comparing their bodies to what they were when they were in college. And,
Yes.
as a college student, I'm sure many people can remember back thinking like, oh, it's so hard. I don't have any time. And then obviously way more intense
Right.
afterwards. So you add on more stress into your life, which affects your metabolism. You add on again where your friends are in terms of their career or in meeting a significant other and getting married and having kids. And so I think a lot of those pressures start to kind of boil inside for people and they don't talk outwardly about them. Women, I think, do a really bad job at sharing the things that go wrong. And you can see this on social media all the time. People are constantly saying like, this is what's great in my life. And here's all the wonderful things that are happening. And people are posting happy pictures because when they're not feeling good, they're not thinking, oh, let me put this up on Instagram right now.
Right.
So we're constantly comparing ourselves to all the, best that is going on in other people's lives. And then again, there's all those pressures to be, the perfect wife, the perfect mom, have the cleanest house while also, exercising every day and having a super successful career. So, it really does get harder for most women in 2018 after the college age, which used to be the biggest trigger point for disordered eating.
Yeah, absolutely. And that move in the trigger point is, I think, something that we haven't really accepted. Because as we add these pressures, we're just like, I'm fine. There's no reason why I can't go to the gym. There's no reason why I can't do this. And along with everything else in your life, it starts to get really hard. And that pressure you're talking about, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Mm-hmm. And that leads to just problems, disorder.
Right. And, we should be doing exercises we enjoy, not being a slave to a Stairmaster.
Yes.
And that adds extra stress. If you're doing an activity that you're not enjoying, maybe you're burning a few calories on there, but does that stress really end up being worth it in the long run? Or eating foods that we don't enjoy or feeling hungry all the time, just trying to lose a pound or two. So, the stress just keeps on compiling from there as well. And again, kind of eats people from the inside and affects other things in their life too.
Amen. That there's no reason that health means you should hate your life. And like you're describing, you don't make it hard. I say that to my clients, like, don't make it hard. If you're going to have a sustainable, healthy lifestyle, it shouldn't be, like you said, being a slave to the Stairmaster or always being hungry. That's not how we do it.
No. And, sometimes that means a transition for people. I was an athlete my whole life. I was a competitive athlete in college. I swam. And I remember when I finished, I was like, okay, so what now? What am I going to compete for? And it took a while psychologically to get into the mode of, oh, I can just go like exercise and enjoy it. And if I'm too tired the next day, it's going to serve me better to sleep in the morning versus forcing myself to get up and run or whatever it was on my schedule.
Yes. A lot of times, even those who weren't athletes, I understand where you're coming from. And even those who were not athletes, we still feel like a rest day is for other people. Rest doesn't help me. I don't have time for that. And you need to rest. You are no longer a competitive athlete. And even if you were, a competitive athlete needs rest.
Right. Everyone needs rest. And that's built into a competitive athlete's lifestyle is a rest day. So, why would no one else be resting too? And it's not that you're, again, just exercising now. Again, most women are, if they're not a full-time mom, they're, a mom and going to work, or they're 100% invested in their career. And that takes a toll. And we need that rest physically and mentally for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably even more as we get older with the demands that you were describing that really, it starts to pile up. I did a little poll of some women in my audience and I was asking them, what is your biggest barrier? What's your biggest health worry? They all said energy. Every last one of them said energy. And a couple times I heard, I'm so tired. And to have that be the resounding thing that people are saying, and I catch myself saying, I'm just so tired. No kidding.
It becomes a vicious cycle too, because you're like, oh, I don't have enough energy. And if I, weighed this, then I would feel better, be more energized, or like everything would be perfect if I just lost a few pounds, which it never will be.
No.
And then, people end up restricting or not eating enough, or they're so preoccupied with other things or so tired that they're not reading their hunger and fullness cues appropriately. So they're eating in a weird pattern. And if you really just learn, oh, wow, I just need to fuel myself. I need to look at food as energy and drink more water instead of the coffee. And I love coffee, but we need to give ourselves the right type of energy so that we feel more energized. Then we're going to end up sleeping better at night. That makes us feel more energized too. And, it again kind of becomes a cycle one way or the other if you keep on falling into the same patterns.
Now, what are some of the more common patterns that you're seeing that lead to trouble, either in your life, in your clients' lives? What have you observed?
So definitely, I guess I'll start with food because as a dietitian, that's where a lot of what I, do comes back to. And it starts in the morning. A lot of people wake up and they're thinking, oh, like we said, I feel guilty about what I ate yesterday, which you ate it, whatever, it's over. Right. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you didn't, we move on. But, they wake up and they're like, oh, now I feel like I have the most willpower first thing in the morning. So let me skip breakfast or let me eat like just a yogurt or just a couple of eggs, which isn't a full balanced meal. And sometimes people have the intention of eating, but then they're too busy in the morning. So, they just run out the door without having anything or grab a bar or a shake. And to start your day off in such a hectic way, also not fueling your body appropriately for what it needs all day long, that just kind of sets you up for failure in terms of, again, your energy, your stress, your relationships, and what are you going to eat later. So I try to emphasize as much as possible for people to wake up and set your alarm for 5 minutes earlier. And just that alone can give you the time to sit down, eat something that's well balanced, and fuel your body for the day. The way I like to put it is that you wouldn't, drive a car or push a car up a hill that had no gas in it and then fill it up at the top, right? And that's what we tend to do. We're like, oh, I'm not going to put in enough energy all day long. I'm chugging along all day. And then people end up binge eating at night because they didn't have enough earlier in the day. So I really think that what you do in the morning absolutely sets the tone for your energy levels and how you're going to feel mentally all day long.
Now, what about the people who feel like I'm just not hungry all day? Like most women end up busy. I keep hearing, oh, I forgot to eat. I've never had a problem with forgetting to eat, but some women out there forget to eat during the day, or they're just not that hungry, and they make dinner their main meal and then some. What advice do you have for them when they don't feel hungry, not just in the morning, but throughout the day?
Right. So I think that can go two ways. I think that sometimes people are so immersed in diet culture that they see so often oh, I should only eat this often, or I should only have a meal this big, that they're trying to convince themselves that they're not hungry when they really are. That can be a group of people. But I think for more people, it's not understanding the difference between hunger and appetite. So hunger is your body's physiological need for food and nutrients. So you're going to be hungry during the day. It's just, do you have an appetite, right? Are you noticing that you need to put that food and that energy in? So noticing it, if you're that type that's so type A that you're so focused on what you're doing in your work or whatever it is going on right now, you could just completely be ignoring those hunger cues that are going on. And maybe you notice oh, every day I get a headache at this time, or I, have a slump in the middle of the afternoon. Those might be your hunger cues. It doesn't have to be this feeling in your stomach of it growling. It could be other things you notice throughout the day too that you should be listening to as, oh, that's my hungry.
That is so interesting, your distinction between hunger and appetite. I've never heard that before. And that explains so much, where you don't really want to eat, but your body's going, hello.
Yeah, it's giving you these other signals that we don't really pay attention to because we really do get so focused on what we're doing every day. Right. And we really do learn as we grow up that growling stomach means hunger and not really anything else. And that's what lets us go way too far, like you said. And then at dinner, you're like, I need to eat 4 servings of dinner right now because I didn't fuel correctly all day long. And now I'm so overly hungry, right?
Yes. That you've really changed the outlook here when you're thinking, all right, you need to eat. Yes, your body's hungry, even if you don't have a stomach growling, even if you're not interested in food.
Right.
Now, there's this idea out there. One of the theories is to keep your metabolism going that you should have mini meals throughout the day.
Mhm.
I'm a little mixed on that. I'm not totally convinced of the science, but what
Yeah.
do you think on that idea?
I think that everyone's different, and that's what's really hard about looking at some research studies. As a dietitian
Mm-hmm.
and, as someone who has a background in exercise science too, I think it's super important to look at evidence based information to kind of guide our recommendations and guide what we do for health. But it's not the end all be all because you're looking at a group of people that was in a very controlled situation.
Right.
And when you're looking at, taking this evidence and applying it to all people, you can't really do that because every single person has different genetics. We're learning more and more that your
Mm-hmm.
genes do play a role in not only what your body is going to look like, but how it needs to be fueled
Sure.
throughout the day. And then also just, again, all the different things that you have going on in one day versus someone else and your schedule and the other people you have to take care of and all of that. So I think it's really important to, again, start to pay attention to those hunger and appetite cues.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really big on promoting intuitive eating,
Yes.
which is really just when when you're born, your body knows when it's hungry, how much it's hungry for. And, we kind of move away from that as we get older because of all the scheduling and whatnot and all the messages that we get. But one thing I think is really helpful for people versus logging every calorie in my fitness pal or, trying to follow these specific meal plans is write down a hunger log of, what time is it? And how do I feel right now on a scale of 1 to 10? And what did I eat? And then how did I feel afterwards? Look at where your energy is for the day. Look at where you end up getting overly hungry because maybe you didn't feel yourself well enough earlier. And respecting what your body's really telling you outside of, again, the just growling in your stomach. So that's something, again, I'd have a client work with. I have an online course where people kind of work through it together because they're figuring out together, oh, wow, there's all these things I'm not paying attention to.
Cool.
And, talking through that with other people versus keeping it inside that, oh, I think I'm hungry, but I don't really know. Yeah. Just saying something out loud or even writing it down for yourself helps you recognize, wow, these are things I have to pay attention to more. So some people might recognize four meals in a day or 3 meals in a snack is fine. Other people might recognize, wow, I have to eat like 7 times in a day because those smaller amounts of food really are better for me.
I love this way of, well, first of all, I love intuitive eating also. I think that is really the best way to even start. I like this idea of getting it out there. First of all, getting it on paper so you can see it, and then getting it out there to a group of other people supporting you. And really that the sense of community, I think, has gotten very big in the health world and that's wonderful. Because you can start to say, oh, I never thought of that. Oh, you're right. Yeah, I noticed that in me too. And I think that's very helpful to take intuitive eating from, inside, you're like, oh, yeah, okay, to writing it down to look at for patterns and then starting to talk about it. That's a smart way to do it.
Yeah, and a lot of people think like, oh, if I've noticed that I have a few disordered patterns, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You could just be a few food rules that you have to get over. People think like, oh, I have to be in like one-on-one therapy with a dietitian or a counselor, and it actually can be way more helpful to work in groups. And that's why what I love most about my job is working with people together so that I could see, feedback from person to person so that I could see something that someone says resonate with someone else and they realize, wow, I'm not alone. Like other people feel this way too. And it's okay to feel that way. And it makes it easier to kind of get over the hump and get a little bit more mentally healthy when there's people that you can relate to.
Yes. And especially women, we are very good at working in community. We're really great at, coming together and pooling our knowledge like that. So I think that's, if you can find support out there and just people to, bounce your ideas off of, that could be helpful too. It doesn't have to be in person. It could be online. It could be a Facebook group. It could be a formal course like Kelly's. It doesn't really matter which way you do it, but getting out there and kind of just putting our heads together about our health is very helpful. Now, what are some of the patterns that you have seen where there might be some disordered behavior? What are some of the things to look out for?
So things to look out for, definitely, if you notice that you're constantly trying to cut something out of your diet. A lot of people are going from one diet to the next, and they're like, well, that one didn't work, and that one didn't work, or it worked, but then it didn't work. So we need to look at a better way to measure success. Success is that you find something sustainable that you can do for the rest of your life that's going to make you feel good physically and mentally. success isn't necessarily that the scale went down or that your body fat is as low as it's ever been, because there's a lot of people who after the fact admit that in those times they were hungry all the time. Maybe they were smoking to try to suppress their appetite. Maybe they were going on appetite suppressing supplements, and overexercising and feeling mentally stressed, and their relationships weren't good, but they looked that way, right? And so often all you see is the way that someone looks, not how are they feeling physically and mentally. So that should, first of all, be the goal, is something that's sustainable, not how do I go on another diet and let me try this one, or maybe this one's going to work. That's an unhealthy pattern. What we consider to be a healthful body weight is one that you can maintain. You're not going to fluctuate and bounce all around without constant dieting, and I think that's important.
Yes.
Another thing to look out for is avoidance of social situations. So if you start to notice, like, oh no, I'm not going to go out for breakfast with that person, or oh, I'm going to skip drinks with my friends, or oh no, I'm not going to, let myself enjoy all this food while I'm on vacation. That's a problem, right? Those are situations where, while yes, we want to eat healthy, nourishing whole foods most of the time, food should be social. It's something that's been a social thing for centuries. So we should be enjoying it and allowing in those moments, ourselves to enjoy just time with food and friends without feeling anxious or guilty about it. So the anxiety around food and the social changes, those can be definitely indicators that you're having a problem too.
That avoidance of social situations is very common. You'll hear, I will not offer my opinion on cleanses at the moment, but you'll hear people say, oh, I can't, I'm on a cleanse. Oh, I can't come to brunch. And that just, you can't live your life like that. Food is supposed to be, yes, while it's fuel, it's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to have a good time with other people and enjoy it.
Right. And, I've even, to your point, I've seen situations where people have gone to weddings and brought their own food, and not for reasons where it's like, oh, I have celiac disease and I'm nervous that I'm going to have a complete flare up, or, oh, I have 4 different food allergies, like reasons of, oh, I'm trying to eat really strict paleo right now so that I could lose weight, so I'm going to go to a wedding and pack, chicken in my purse. Like, that's the point where things are getting unhealthy. I'm all about having emergency snacks and backup plans and food stashed everywhere, but it's more so that I don't get overly hungry, not so I can avoid enjoying food with other people.
Right. And when you are trying to be so strict that you can't be flexible, other than, if you have an actual medical reason why you shouldn't have something, if you're having trouble in normal social situations so that you have to bring your own food, you might want to rethink that diet because it's not really sustainable.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, medical conditions too, I think a lot of people jump the gun to thinking that they have a food intolerance when they don't necessarily.
Yes.
Just stress alone affects your digestive health drastically. So if you're so stressed all the time from all this stuff going on in your lifestyle, and then on top of that, you're stressing yourself out from trying to diet and lose weight or, look or be a certain way, that alone can cause stomach trouble. So maybe it has nothing to do with gluten or dairy or soy or any of those things or sugar. And really it's just your stress levels that are harming your digestive tract. And you don't need to try to cut all those things out all the time.
Yeah. There's a lot to our health. We have multiple body systems that get affected by what we do, how we feel. And, we're very well intentioned when we try to solve the problem like that, cutting out a food group or, an element like sugar. But sometimes it's a bigger problem than just that food. Maybe you will feel better with that. There's nothing wrong with experimenting. But yeah, it gets hard when we are constantly experimenting on ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And it's good to have an extra eye on that, experimentation too. If you really do feel like you have a health problem, which many people do, I know many people with autoimmune illnesses, and finding what, doesn't belong in their diet can help, but you want to have guidance. You want to meet with, a health professional that can help you through that.
Yes, absolutely. I've said many times in this summit that you should have, if you don't have a doctor who's well connected with others, form your own health network of practitioners who can help you. And a registered dietitian is an excellent helper. A personal trainer, whoever it is that you feel like you need, sometimes even just one meeting can be helpful for you to start to get on the right path. You don't have to spend your life with practitioners, but
Right.
it's just getting a little bit of guidance can be very helpful because, we do have education in that area that you don't need to have.
Right. Yeah, and if you do need to cut something out of your diet, they can help you realize, oh, here's what can replace that for you so you don't feel hungry or you don't feel like there's nothing you can eat, because often that's how people feel sometimes too, and that's stressful.
Yes, absolutely. You had mentioned earlier overexercising, and this is something that I see a lot in my
Mm-hmm.
friends.
Yeah.
Uh, Even I've done it before. What are some of the signs you've seen of overexercising?
So if you're overexercising, I mean, tiredness, you already said. So many
Yeah,
people are saying, oh, I feel like I don't have enough energy. People are putting all of their energy into exercise, and then they don't have enough left for not only everything else on their plate, but basic body functions. So
right.
people just assume that, the more cardio I do, even though we know and you hear over and over in the media sometimes too now, it's not all about cardio.
Right.
People still have this idea in the back of their head that, well, I'm going to burn more calories doing this. So they've got their heart rate monitors on and they're tracking every calorie and how can I burn more? Let me try to burn everything that I'm eating. Those are signs that you're over exercising.
Yes.
But also, people, everyone thinks they need to run a half marathon now.
Right.
That's something I just see so often. And, I like running. I do those because I enjoy it. But some people hate running and they're dragging themselves through this just because they think it's going to be a way to lose weight. And they end up finding sometimes in the long run, wow, I actually gained weight because I was more stressed. I wasn't sleeping enough. I ended up not knowing how to fuel my body for it. So I ate at the wrong times or overate at the wrong times. And it kind of ends up backfiring for health too.
Right.
Or pushing themselves into doing 2-a-day workouts to try to do the cardio and the strength and then getting injured, and then you can't exercise more long term, right? So if you're exercising to the point where you're constantly sore, you have pain in your joints, your energy levels are low, that's a problem. Now, if let's say you're an athlete and you do really enjoy competing in these races, and a lot of women do really enjoy an active lifestyle and they have the time to get up and do some cardio in the morning and maybe go to a strength group strength class later on. If that's you, you need to understand that you are an athlete.
Right.
You don't have to be going and competing in marathons or be considered a professional to require the same type of fuel as an athlete. So there's also a difference between, am I over exercising and really not enjoying it and hurting my body, and am I just not fueling properly for the amount of activity that I'm doing? And I think that a lot of people fall into that category too, where maybe you're doing a sustainable amount of exercise if you ate enough to support that.
Yeah, and our bodies are all different, and you don't have to be on a formal team or an athlete in an organization to be an athlete. I mean, I know a lot of people who should be considering themselves athletes. They are training hard. They are running these marathons and half marathons, and they somehow that seems to go hand in hand with a paleo lifestyle. I'm not really sure why they like paleo, but they're still very tired from it. And really thinking about what are your actual energy needs and what does overexercising mean to you. It's very different for someone who's an athlete versus someone who's doing it because they feel like they have to.
Right. And, going back to, how we define certain levels of health, I talked about how to define a healthful weight a little bit, how to define your physical fitness level. When you're the most physically fit, you have the energy for exercise and then still have energy to accomplish everything else in your life. So if exercise has gotten to the point where you force yourself into being able to do it, but you're fizzling out at the end, and then you don't have the energy to do everything else that you need, you're not improving your fitness level. You're actually harming it by doing more.
Now, we have not quite gotten to talking about weight loss, otherwise known as fat loss.
Right.
And all the things that we're saying, it doesn't mean that someone might not need to reduce their fat and lose a little weight. We're not saying that that's not true. What do you recommend for a healthy, sustainable way to change your body composition to get rid of that fat? How do we do it? Because we've done a lot of the what you shouldn't do. What does one do if they need to lose some of their fat?
So I'll be honest that it's a little bit more my philosophy to look at health parameters versus weight. Believe it or not, actually a lot of research that says that it's not necessarily your weight or your body fat, within reasonable levels,
Right.
that are going to impact your risk for chronic illness and premature death and longevity. So I actually, if someone came to me and said, oh, I want to lose weight, I would be talking to them more about, why do you want to lose weight? What's the real goal here? And then we try to focus on that. So how can we look at goals that are related to your blood sugar or your blood pressure or your cholesterol levels, or maybe it's other labs that we need to be paying attention to, like, are your iron levels high enough? And is your thyroid functioning properly? And how about your hormones? Because a lot of women have irregular menstrual function because of their stress levels or their eating or their exercise. So I try to look at those as much as possible and try to shift the mentality from, let me try to lose the fat, to what other health goals can I have? Right. And when it comes to, body changes, maybe a little bit more, well, let's focus on gaining muscle, or let's focus on, strength improvement. So if you are going to be doing more strength training, let's track that your squats have gotten, gotten to be able to lift a higher amount of weight, or your endurance for those muscles has become greater too. And that's not to say that no one should lose weight. Some people, that would be a healthier set point for you. Some people, though, have this in their head that, I think I need to lose weight, when in reality, you're going to be more stressed out 10 pounds lighter than you would be right now, and it's not worth it for you, right? So I like to try to help people get to the weight they belong at by looking at everything else in their life a little bit more, and it's not going to happen instantaneously, but over time you can get there.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, your body weight, first of all, it doesn't really, I tell everybody first thing, your body weight is only a measure of how much is in you and on you. That doesn't really tell us a lot. Right. Your body fat tells us a little bit more, but these are just two of the many outcomes. I mean, you listed a bunch of other outcomes from the same types of effort to live a healthy lifestyle. It could be your labs. It could be your gain in strength. So there are lots of things for us to look at with improvement. And I feel like that's more freeing. It's not just what's your weight, what's your body fat. What are these other things that you can accomplish and feel really proud of yourself for?
Right. And that's the thing. Like, what are things that can increase your confidence that aren't related to your body weight? Because at another time in your life, your weight's going to change again, right? Like, women, we go through menopause, we're going to get older, and you don't want to be tying your happiness and your health to a specific body type, because it's not going to be where you are forever. And we need to appreciate and kind of accept that too. And it doesn't mean that everyone's always going to love their body. I think that that's important to put out there too. Yeah. There might be days where you love it more than others, but, point out the things that you do love about your body and look at what else in life is going to be making you happy. I think, just starting out, how can I track like my energy levels and my level of happiness mentally and how I feel about myself? Maybe like write a journal about that when you start your journey to try to get healthier, and then look at, okay, what little improvements can I make throughout the day? You know what? I'm really not eating enough vegetables. So how can I fit in an extra serving right now? And then once that's a normal part of your life, evaluate, do I feel a little bit better? Have I been liking some foods more? Do I feel more full after these meals? Oh, well, then that's, a great improvement I've made. Let me move on to the next thing that's going to make me feel a little bit better, physically, mentally. And again, over time, you'll get to that point where your body is where it's supposed to be.
Yes, I mean, bit by bit. Each thing you do to make your body healthier makes you feel better. And often, the aesthetic outcome, you look leaner, is something that does come from all of this, but making that the look the main goal, it's ignoring all the other parts. Like, your look is not the problem. It might be you're not fueling yourself, or you're overworking, or maybe you're not working enough to see improvements in your health. There's so much more to it. And weight, how you look, your body fat, those are almost secondary outcomes of all of these other things you're doing. And we don't focus enough on all the other improvements and other work that can be done. It's only that sort of secondary outcome of how you look.
Right.
That's very hard to get around.
It is. And, like I said, it's not to say that no one should lose weight. Right. Some people for sure, can, but it's how do you get there? How long does it take? And, people like to hear these things like, oh, lose this much every week. I say more, don't lose more than a pound a week. And even a half a pound for most women is, a good marker of, okay, if you're losing more than that, you might not be doing something that's sustainable, or you're not doing something that's going to energize you enough to feel good in the moment in your life too.
Right. If you need to lose a significant amount of weight and get a certain amount off, that I feel like that's something that should be done under supervision of a health professional, a dietitian, someone like me, a health coach, a doctor, someone who can monitor you to make sure it doesn't become disordered and to stop the heavy efforts before they become, burdensome. Because that's a diet, actually, let's call it more like an intervention. That's not a long term thing. It's supposed to be get you to a healthy point where you can then make these other changes. And most people don't need that. We're talking about the minority of women out there who need an intervention like that. Usually, if you just make these changes, you'll start to see that improvement.
Right. And, starting to realize too, and this is where the health coaching really does come in from the perspective psychologically. Yes. We don't connect our body and our mind enough. And I think more people need to realize there's no finish line, right? Like health is something that's constant, and, we're going to work towards health and wellness our entire lives. And there's no finish line. There's no perfection. And, we're always kind of, just trying to work towards like peace and knowing what to do naturally, I think.
That is the most important thing for us to remember, especially those who are always trying to accomplish something. There's no finish line. And that makes me a little uneasy at first to think about, where I'm like, oh my God, it's never over. But that's something we should take solace in. That should give us that peace, that there's no ultimate goal. There's no prize at the end.
Right.
And right. I like that.
There's no perfect eating. And I'm a person who, I come from a family that has a lot of anxiety. I've dealt with anxiety a lot in my past. It still comes up sometimes. And I have, been very type A, but again, in talking to other people and doing more yoga, just like to relax versus to make it a workout, those are things that help me get to the point too, where I realize, you know what, I'm never going to finish my to-do list. Like, I'm a huge list person. I write everything up. It's never going to end. And I'm just got to be at peace with that. So, really kind of, again, connecting with other women, like you said, and, speaking outwardly about it helps you to realize, there's no end point, and that's okay. Like, we're constantly just, every day's different, and we just want to get to a point where we feel good.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is, I can't say it any better than that. And your stress on community, along with that, it does help. Whoever your community may be, that it does help us keep things in perspective. And, I hate the idea that a to-do list will never be done. My to-do list was done last Friday, by the way. And then I sideswiped a woman. And then my to-do list got bigger. And something is always going to happen. Hopefully you don't idiotically sideswipe a woman coming off the beltway like I did. But, your to-do list becomes a living document, and your health is like that too. And if we can accept that sometimes there's no end point in all the things we're trying to do, it's a hard one, but yoga helps.
Meditation for some people, yeah.
Yes, it helps.
Works for you, yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for everything today. It's nice to hear that, sometimes you can just calm down, just take it down a notch and you're going to be healthier. And I think finding that comfort in yourself comes from just, okay, what's the real goal here? What are we really trying to do? And I thank you for your advice today.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be on, and hope that other women that are listening can relate and take it a little easier on themselves and try to look at their health goals a little bit differently too.
Yeah, it's tough for us, but thank you.
Thank you.